Hello everyone, this is Jörg Knaus. I'm working as a solution architect for SAP at Swisscom. So I'm streaming here from Zurich. So hello to everyone. And one of my focus topics is S4HANA. So I did several S4HANA implementation or transformation projects. And yeah, I'm excited that we can do a live event today and I can share some of the knowledge, what will happen during the projects when we, especially to our ABAP code, when we do move from ECC to S4HANA. So I prepared a little agenda. First, I want to show why this is different from the earlier upgrades and what we have to do. I will give an idea of the overall process, and then we will look at several tools, because there are a lot of tools available to support you in the process. And yeah, we'll do that live, show some examples. And then at the end, I also can explain what is something that you can start from today. And at the end, we will have time for questions. So you can use the chat feature in YouTube and I will answer your questions. Okay. So why S4HANA? All customers running SAP, they have to think about the four major questions. What do I have to do? Why do I want to move to S4HANA? How can I move to S4HANA at brownfield or greenfield? And when will be a good timing? Which will be a roadmap, which is my timing to go there. So I think these questions need to be answered by each of us individually. But we already can prepare for that. And in most of the times we hear about end of maintenance. I think that is a topic, but usually, as you see in this picture, it might come up earlier to you than just the end of maintenance. What happened? By announcing S4HANA, SAP stopped developing new innovations for R3 or ECC. And therefore, the gap between what you're currently running and have and what you could have is growing every year. So it was not a big deal at 2015, 2016, the first S4HANA projects, but now this gap is growing. And of course, on the other hand side, the chief financial officer is not interested in spending a lot of money on the old infrastructure for you to develop new applications, because it's already known that it will be end of life. So the urge of moving forward will be higher and higher every year. That's why we need to be prepared. And with R3, we did for the last 30 years, we did upgrades. And why is this different now when we move to S4HANA? Because the architecture, the overall design of S4HANA is more a hybrid infrastructure, hybrid architecture, where you combine your digital core or your ABAP backend machine, ERP application with cloud applications. So from the new design in S4HANA, SAP decided to move several things that have been in the past in the core. They have moved these functionalities out in some cloud application. So the first time when we move from R3 to S4, we come to a product where some components are missing. And that's one of the major effort driver that you have to take care of, because yeah, things will not be there anymore and you have to take care of that in your own custom developments. So what could that be? What could be different? I have listed up the major highlights of the SAP Simplification List. The SAP Simplification List is a, I think, 900 pages document where everything is explained that is changed between R3 and S4. So what is missing, what has changed. And everybody has maybe heard of it, that in old release we had customers and vendors, and today we have now the business partner. So this, for instance, if you have your own application code or interfaces creating customers, you need to adapt so it will create a business partner in the future. In sales and distribution, we had the functionalities of credit management the functionality has been moved to the financial services credit management. So if you use that and have made your own code, you need to make use of the new functionalities and tables in that. For material master, we have some changes in the data model, and also the material number itself. It's now a 40-character field, so that might give you different offsets in your code. It was 18 digits before, and this needs to be taken care of. The functionality of sales activity was a part of sales and distribution. It's replaced by the C4HANA application or by S4HANA customer management. So in case you need that, in case you have used these functionalities in your own code, it needs to be replaced by new functions as well. Same for foreign trade and web processing. And in a lot of the cases, maybe you have used call transaction or batch input on some of the classic transactions. They are obsolete for quite some years already in ECC. So the old transaction codes, they haven't been supported, but they have still been available. Now in S4HANA, you might completely miss these functions, these transactions. They will not exist anymore. And therefore, if you have used them in your own code, you need to replace. That's just some of the examples, so you get an idea what in generally are the topics that need to be taken care of. And we will see the tools that help you or guide you through the process, so you can scan your code and see if some of these restrictions will apply to your own code. The complete list you will find in help.sap.com. You will find a PDF document with all the restrictions or simplifications. And there is also a simplification item catalog where you can browse and search for function modules, BAPs, IDOCs, and so on. So that's in general what's different from the earlier upgrades, SPAO and the SPDD transaction. So you have to take care of these simplifications. And in addition, of course, you know that S4HANA is running only on a HANA database. So you're not supporting other database vendors. And the data model has also changed. So this is a picture of the old data model. For instance, in finance, you have a lot of aggregated tables with open items or statistic values, aggregated values in costing, in finance, and so on. And on S4HANA, you only have these tables. So all the others are gone. That makes it simpler. Basically, in general, we're only working with the item level. We don't need aggregates anymore. That simplifies it for everyone. But of course, for our own code, these might have some implications. It's not that critical because there's one very nice feature, and that is called Compatibility Views. I'll give an example here. So with the compatibility view, you still can use old table names, and you will be redirected by using a CDS view to the new table. So I have an example here. If we go to SC16H, the new SC16 version, you should try that. And then if you enter the table name like MSEC, which is the old table name, you will see that there is a proxy object. The proxy is a CDS view, and that view is reading the data from the new database tables. So if you do a select on the MSEC, you will still get value because the view is reading them from the new table matdoc, which is great. That simplifies the move. And also, if you go to data dictionary, SE11, and you have a table MSEC, you can go to extras, replacement objects, and then you find this CDS view that will be automatically executed when you do a select on the old table names. So these compatibility views are great for customers moving from R3 to S4HANA, simplifies the process of keeping existing code. Of course, it's impossible to insert data or to do updates. Normally, you shouldn't do updates on SAP tables anyhow. That's done by BAP calls. So the BAPs have been changed to the new data model. And therefore, these compatibility views, they do a great deal in supporting you. But it's not available for all tables, but for most of them. And it's a very good thing for read access. So you can move to S/4HANA, keep the old select statements for this, and then maybe later, when you need new functionalities, new fields, you might change your code to the new tables. Okay. So now you imagine yourself being in an S/4HANA project. Of course, we do it not directly on the production. Usually you do a sandbox first, then we do the development system, then we do the quality system, and at the end, the production. So you can change your code in the sandbox or in the dev system, and it will be transported to the production environment. So you're very relaxed on the go live weekend because your change is already there and they will be transported. System conversion has a lot of activities, not only custom code. Today we're only focusing on the custom code part. So usually SAP Basis is using maintenance planner, using Zoom DMO to convert the whole database from the legacy database system to HANA and to the new data model and so on. And at the end, you will also have application-specific customizing, transformation jobs, and so on. So this a whole project team is involved, and the developer has a very important role in this transformation project to adapt the custom code. This custom code adaptation process has more or less 3 major steps in it. So what we usually do is first we evaluate which part of the code is still in use. We try to identify the used code to reduce the effort, because if the code is not used, it should not be necessary to adapt it. We call it housekeeping, right? So I mean, it would be possible to convert the whole code, but if it's not used, it's a very good timing before an S/4HANA project starts to measure which parts of the codes, and it's not only transactions, it's also or reports, it's also classes, methods, data elements, tables, and so on. To really measure which elements of your custom code are still in use. We measure that on the production machine. And what do you think? How much percentage of custom code is still in use in an average SAP system? And we measured about, let's say, personally, I measured about 50 SAP customers, and then the average value is really that 50% of the code is unused. So it's really a very good thing to reduce the efforts in adapting code for S/4HANA. Then the second thing is that we do all these code checks, which objects are not there anymore. I will explain later. And the third thing would be maybe performance tuning. So one thing is having the code running. Another thing can be optimize the performance for HANA and S/4HANA. That's something that in some cases is even done after the go live. It's not necessary to do everything before go live. So in the conversion process, you will have SPDD and SPAR. SPDD for the data dictionary changes, and SPAR for the ABAP code that needs to be done. It's similar to the upgrade procedure, but you will have different errors and findings, and the number of findings will be different. And the ABAP code needs to be able to run on HANA database. So maybe you are already on a HANA database, then these changes have already been done. If you come from a legacy database, you also have to make sure that all the SQL statements are proper for the HANA database. I will show that. So of course, it also has to be on Unicode. Most of SAP clients have already done that, but if it's not on Unicode, you have to go to Unicode first before we can go to S/4HANA. And then we have all the SQL statements. They need to be working together with HANA. Oops, And the third thing is we have to check for code changes based on the simplification list. There are a lot of documents, a lot of blogs that explain the whole things in detail. And I will guide you now through the different tools available and provided by SAP, which support us in this transformation. So the tools to identify used and unused code is the SCMON transaction and the SUSG for the aggregation of snapshots for this usage data. Some customers, they use the opportunity for housekeeping and move the unused code to the ABAP Git. So you don't lose your code, you might use it later maybe. You can remove it from the system and take it out of scope for the transformation. We will look at the ATC, the ABAP test cockpit performs all the checks, and we will look at Eclipse. Eclipse has a nice functionality that is called quick fixes and mass quick fixes, which more or less automatically adapts the code to S/4HANA for some of the patterns that will be changed. And there is a very nice Fiori to support the process of the custom code migration. I will show that live online, and I will show Eclipse and I will show Fiori, so you get an idea what the tools can do for you. And it's very important to understand what you need to do manually and what can be done by the tools. So SCMON, you can go to your production system, execute SCMON, activate the recording, and from this point on, the usage of all elements will be measured. It will generate a little workload, let's say up to 3%, because it's always running all the time. Every user calls a transaction, will record that. And but it's no risk to do that. You even can deactivate it immediately again. And it will create a lot of data because it collects a lot of data on your machine. But I think it's a very good thing, very stable. It's also available for most of the ECC releases already. If SCMON transaction is not in your system, you can also use the UPL. I will show later. But SCMON is the state-of-the-art tool to record the usage, and the SUSG transaction is used to aggregate this statistical data because it generates a lot of data, and to create kind of snapshot of the usage. And this will be used by the Fiori to see which is used code and which is unused code. The SUSG is also available for a lot of SAP releases, even to SAP S is release 7, but you have to maintain the node to make the transaction available in your system. So of course, this should be done maybe 1 month before or 3 months before, so you have some data available about the usage. If SCMON is not available, you can activate the UPL by transaction code CC_apps. It's more or less the same. You don't have that much details. It's less data, therefore there is no aggregation for that. And it's also possible to use Solution Manager to work with these kind of things, but you can do it directly in the productive system and get these statistics. Then next activity can be using Code Inspector. You can query your code for SQL statements that need to be adjusted for the HANA database. There are 2 check variants, functional DB and functional DB addition, which should be performed, and they will show up where you have native SQL statements, and you can adopt that if not already done. And these checks are also available in all the SAP releases on the legacy system. So typically you can do that in the development system and check your code. There's also a tool called the SQL Monitor, which is also covering the dynamic SQL statements. So maybe if the code checker cannot find a SQL statement because it's dynamically generated, You can use SQL Monitor, and that's also a very good tool for performance tuning and identifying slow statements and so on. Now we go to the S/4HANA checks itself, and there we don't have the checks in the older ECC releases. Even in EHP 8, usually you don't have it because it requires a sub-basis stack of 7.52. So the standard procedure is to connect a central ATC system, which is on the newest release. It can be a standalone NetWeaver server, it can be an S/4HANA system, or it can even be a cloud instance. And you connect this system and perform the check from the central ATC system. I've seen there are also sessions in this online track weekend regarding ATC, and you will find a lot of documentation on that. I've added some of the major topics. So the idea is really that you have a new system, S/4HANA system, new NetWeaver stack, and connect it by RFC to your existing backend system. Usually this is enough to have the development system connected because there is your original ABAP source code. And when you have this connection available, you can perform the checks for the S/4HANA simplifications. So this is just a summary of the major configuration step. On the central system, you need to download the simplification database. So the system knows what are the simplifications available. And then we have to connect an RFC destination for the existing backend system. And there is a central node to have these remote functionalities in place, depending on your SAP release. When this is all connected, you can use that. You can even go that far that when you release a transport in your existing SAP system, it will do by RFC these S/4HANA checks. And then you get an error message. You should not transport it because it still has some code that is not working on in S/4HANA. So the whole checking thing is something that we do in an S/4HANA transformation project, of course, but you also can start using this from now because we don't want to create new code anymore that is not compliant with the S/4HANA architecture. So the check variant for ATC is called S/4HANA Readiness Remote. It includes the HANA database checks, and it has additional checks for the simplification items. What kind of errors can occur? We have maybe you have done append structures to existing tables from SAP, and if this data model changes, of course, your append structures need to be in the right table again after the upgrade. So that can be one finding. Your addiction need to be in with the new data model. Then we have also the if your base table is changed to a redirect view, you cannot use it as a base view in a view itself. So it can be that as a result of the transformation, you get a hierarchy of view in view in view in view, and sometimes this is not possible. And then the code inspector will explain that you should go to the new table name and not to the redirect view or compatibility view to do that. You will get findings for the field length, so the new length of the material number. There are also a lot of currency fields that have been longer than before. Lots of these findings are also false positives because it doesn't really matter that the field is longer now. It's working fine, but still, to be sure, you have to double check all these findings. You will get ideas when there are any unsupported database operations. That means if you do an insert on a table that is not a table anymore. You will find all kind of missing objects, like BAPI is not there anymore, transaction is not there anymore, structure is not there, table is not there anymore, and so on. and of course all the HANA SQL statements, and also this order by. That means if you did not use order by in your SQL statements, and it is important how the sorting of the result should be, then normally you should use order by to do that. But if you missed that in the past, the sorting was always the same. Now, when we move to a column-based storage, the result, sorting of the result might be differently. So a typically pattern is that we add order by primary key to make sure that the sorting is okay. If your ABAP code already has a syntax error, I think it cannot be used at the moment, and it cannot also be checked. So you will not find detailed findings on code that is not running as of today. And also, what you need to be aware of, if you have created your custom tables, like here, this is a custom table, but in the custom table, maybe you have used data elements from SAP. Like what a lot of times I see these beverage data elements. Most of our clients, they don't use the beverage solution. They use beverages, of course, but they don't use the SAP beverage solution. And therefore, the beverage solution is not part of S/4HANA anymore. So all these data elements are gone. It's also possible for other industry solutions. So these data elements, they don't exist anymore. The developer's intention never was to use the beverage functionalities, but by default, this was the first data element showing up when you searched for a date field. And therefore, you really have to replace all these data elements by other data elements, or you create your set custom data elements. They always be there. Otherwise, you lose your data because this table cannot be activated anymore. So it will come up in SPDD. And if you don't resolve these conflicts, you will lose your data even in your custom tables. So that's something you can start very early to change all these data elements to a data element that exists in R3 and in S4, and the whole transformation process is way smoother for this. Okay. So what I'm doing now is I'm switching from the presentation to Eclipse. In Eclipse, you have this ABAP development tool set. You can have your development packages here. You can change your source code. I have just some dirty code examples here. And when you right-click on your package, you can use run as ABAP test cockpit. Then it uses the default check variant, or you can use ABAP test cockpit with. And then you can put in the name of the check variant. It can be S/4HANA Readiness. There's also S/4HANA Readiness Remote or S/4HANA Readiness 1909 if you want explicitly to check for one SAP release. But typically you can enter the name of the variant, S/4HANA Readiness, and it will check your code for the S/4HANA Readiness. And then we get the result window here with all the findings. I can double click that. We get into the coding. So the table KONB doesn't exist anymore. It's another table. It's pricing elements, but there is now a new API, a class method that will do that for you. So if I'm having these findings, I can right-click on the finding and use a quick fix. So it can replace the select on the table by a select on another table, for instance. Now change the new, it knows the new name, it replaces the select, it will work as it was. I have other findings here. So these are the quick fixes. I can also add the Pseudo command. So I say it's okay like this, I want to keep it, I can rename it, or I can use the API call. So this is the new class, and that will provide the information from the pricing. So instead of typing this code on your own, you can use the quick fix, and it will be replace it and it has a knowledge database. And we see that there are always a lot of different patterns for quick fixes, and the list of quick fixes is growing. So it was only a few at the beginning, now it's getting more and more. And there is also the functionalities of mass quick fixes. Where we can go to the ATC then. So if you have a list of programs, you can also perform the recommended quick fix. So you don't get the dialog, which quick fix you want to have. It will automatically use the recommended quick fix, the first option in the list of quick fixes, to change this pattern. So you can use it for the order by statements, for instance. So you can add an order by primary key to all missing select statements. And yeah, I think that's a really very useful feature. And it would be a shame to do that on manually without the tool. It also adds the comment, so you see that the quick fix has done the changes. You can do the mass quick fixes, and it has a lot of patterns, like table VB UK as well. You can replace that. That's for the quick fixes. So really, I recommend to use that, and that's also an additional reason to work with Eclipse. And now we look at the Fiori. I go to the Fiori. On my Fiori Launchpad, I've added the custom code migration Fiori. So here I can create conversion projects. I have done one as a preparation here. And here I can say my material number will be the length of 18 or 19 or 20 or 40 digits, because the content, the field will always be 40 characters, but the content of the field can be less. And so you don't get the false positives. You can set that. You have an RFC destination. You can merge the usage from your production. So we have STMon and SUSG done in the production. We have scanned the source code on the dev system, and the Fiori merges the results together. So we can define the namespaces we want to scan. We can kind of scope the development classes and packages we want to scan. We can merge the usage together, and we get an analysis result. That means all these error categories we've seen before, it will be classified on a high level. There's a lot of charts and statistics, and we can drill down. And from the Fiori, again, we have all the details, which line of code needs to be adopted. So we have all the statistics by OSS node, by finding, by category here, like sales and distribution, data model changes. I will see all the ABAP code that needs to be adjusted. So I can also look at the code, see the statements. And I also can navigate to the OSS nodes. These OSS nodes are a very important data source of information, explaining why this has changed and how we can perform the checks. Let's see if I have some notes here. You see, is there a quick fix available for this topic? And you can navigate to the OSS node. And the new data model is explained, and there is usually also code examples how you need to adjust them, because all customers have the same situation, and there's always an example how to perform these activities. I can go back to the Fiori. So here also, if you change the code, of course, the list will get smaller and smaller. You can schedule the scan job, and then the number of findings will go down. And yes, I go back to the slides. So this is for the Fiori. You can navigate, you can identify, you can use it for estimations of effort. And if you want to have the Fiori, it's not shown by default. So you need to add this catalog, subbasis TCRT, to your user in order to bring the tile on the Fiori Launchpad. And you need to activate these for all data services so the Fiori application will run smoothly. And then you can start working with that. It's really very nice. So that's from the tools. You see, you're not alone with it. You have a lot of tools. And thinking about now, what can we do today? I think you should start collecting the usage statistics right now after the session. You can immediately start creating new code and be aware of the simplifications. That means you don't use the old transaction codes anymore. You don't use BAPIs that are not in S/4HANA anymore, because it would be unnecessary. If you have old code, it happened 10 years ago. Nobody knew what will happen with S/4HANA. But today we know, we have it in the simplification database. We see what needs to be changed. And you can do that for new code from now. And to be able to check if this code is working, you need to set up the remote ABAP test cockpit. Then you can yourself check when you create code, you can always check. We have, of course, the developer training. I think it's a very important preparation for an S/4HANA project, that you learn about CDS views, about OData services, working with Eclipse, and so on. Because when the project is there, then you don't have the time. I think that's the minimum you should do. And then if you have more time, you also could start already adapt existing code. Personally, I prefer, especially if you can get rid of all these data elements that are not there in S/4HANA anymore. You can make your life easier. You can start now. Of course, sometimes it's a little bit complicated to transport this code in production. You should have a regression test for that. But on the dev system, you can already start. It's very important that you get a feeling about the efforts. How much is the number of your code? How much findings you have in your systems? And some customers also started to transform their custom code to the cloud platform, which is a different design. So it's not a code adoption. It's more a code rewriting from scratch. Usually in the cloud, it works different. And that's also a design that you can start with it for the new developments, especially. You can start with this now. And last point I want to mention, and then I think we will have time for questions, is that during the project, it will not be done in a week. Typically, an S/4HANA project is maybe half a year, 9 months, something, maybe more. And therefore, you will have the existing landscape on ECC, development system, quality, and production. And you will have a new landscape with S/4HANA. So if in the time of S/4HANA you have other changes, other change requests that need to be performed on the old world, you have typically dual maintenance, so that changes need to be done in ECC world and in the S/4HANA world. There are tools in Solution Manager that guide you in a retrofit process. In lots of the cases, you also can do that manually, just because it's not the same code, right? In ECC, you have maybe different code, different tables, and therefore you need to do that conflicts between the old and new world on your own. So my recommendation is to keep this as an absolute minimum. So if you tell the business you can change until the last day, you will have hundreds of thousands of transport requests. If you say nothing is allowed, then you will still end up with maybe 1,000 transport requests of absolutely urgent corrections and so on. So I think from that side, we closed the loop of a whole S/4HANA project from the perspective of an ABAP developer. And we know all the tools. And I wish you much fun with the S/4HANA, because it's really great. Once you start working on S/4HANA, you don't want to get back on ECC. You will miss all the tools and features. And now you know what you have to do to get there. I will be available for questions in the YouTube chat now. And I hope you liked what you've seen, and I hope I see each of you today doing some other sessions, and wish you a lot of fun with the online track. Greetings from Zurich. Tschüss zusammen.
Yes. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I have been following in the comments section, and everybody is giving a large piece of thumbs up. Great. We have one question from Phil Cooley, and I'll just repost that here in your experience, Jörg, what part of the project are more complex and take time to complete? Basically, would be good to know what the major challenges you have faced in real projects.
What part of the project? Where is that? More complex. So shall I type it now, or what?
No, you can just answer. Everybody is still watching and listening.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that's brilliant. So I'm with you. Thanks, Pia. So from my personal experience, the ABAP code adoption is maybe one of the easier part in an S/4HANA implementation. It's working very well. The old code is working very well in the new environment. So I think the most critical parts are more the financial areas, with together with the universal journal, with the currency, the new solutions for currencies, and so on. And the business partner is one of the effort drivers in the project. And of course, there's also a lot of discussions ongoing. Should we do it more technical, one-to-one, or should we do a complete redesign, like a greenfield approach? And then, of course, these decisions have to be made. Like if we go for greenfield, it's a completely different discussion than for brownfield. And there's a lot of arguments for both sides. And then, of course, also the thing with the history, lots of customers, they want to bring the whole history into S/4HANA, which is a good thing because you can still do reporting on the data. But on the other hand, if you keep the whole history, you're not very flexible in terms of making use of the new functionalities. And you still have to keep the old customizing settings, you have to keep the old master data, deleted master data, and so on. So, right. So to do things new is sometimes more attractive, but also quite some designing effort. And these are the major discussions there.
Right. Makes good sense. Can I just get you to turn your webcam back on, and maybe even your screen, so we can still see how to connect with you on LinkedIn, for example?
Yes, I do that.
Thank you. All right. And meanwhile, I think we have two questions, and they are actually in the bottom of the YouTube chat. I know you follow that on your phone, so maybe I can get you to scroll down to the bottom of the questions. There are two really good questions there.
So the one question I see here is it better to have a big bang or keep them the landscape, all the new landscape working in parallel? So our strategy is usually to start to try a big bang. So we think about, is it possible to do a big bang on one weekend for the whole organization globally, maybe all the modules at the same time? If that is possible, this is the easiest way. If that is not possible because the complexity is just too big, we don't have enough resources for the support on Monday morning and so on. So for some reason we find it is impossible to do a big bang, then we have to go by plant, by country, by division, or by functionality. But that's usually not so easy. You have to pay a price. If you go step by step, we call it also, if you migrate in waves, then you have to do interfaces, temporary interfaces, which can be very complex. So one of the advantages of SAP is to have an integrated system, and if you split this integration wherever it is, you will lose functionality and you will have to build temporary interfaces. But there's large organizations which cannot avoid, where a big bang is impossible, and then we do it step by step. Let's say one example is to go with finance first, but you really have to make sure if you go with finance first, you don't have the same tight integration between finance and production, for instance.
Perfect.
Okay, another question, maybe I can see now.
And we still can't see you on the webcam or your screen.
You don't see the webcam.
No. There, now we can see you. Can you get the screen on too?
Yeah. Is that okay?
I can't see it yet, but let's just give it.
You see the screen?
Not yet.
I maybe have to do that again. It was kind of active.
Yeah, and then put it back on. Yes.
Sorry, there's a lot of difficulty. Brilliant, thanks.
No problem.
I think there was also a question if we can start on any DB with these checks. That is correct. I think it was also answered by one of the people in the chat. We really can already start doing these SQL adjustments for HANA on the legacy database. They also will work in the old system. So you really can prepare that part of the code in the old landscape on any DB and then already be prepared for the HANA database.
Great. You're still keeping track of the questions? I know there are a lot of them that have been popping in.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments. Yeah.
And thanks everyone for keeping us active. We really appreciate that.
That's fantastic. It's a very good feeling being live and getting responses. It's brilliant.
I think Nelson Gomez has a really interesting question. Do you suggest an agile Activate method for the conversation or a traditional project method?
So what we see is when we do greenfield projects, the design of the new functionalities is more agile. That means that we, from the beginning, work with the running S/4HANA system, including all the Fioris, and do the fit gap analysis based on the system. So we're not creating half a year of paperwork. We are from the beginning working with the running S/4HANA system. So that's mainly for greenfield, but also for new functionalities that will be activated during a brownfield project. And it's not completely agile, maybe like a Scrum over the whole process, over the whole project. We still have these phases, like the major 6 phases of SAP Activate, discover, prepare, and then explore for the design, and realize, deploy, and run. So there we have kind of these phased approach, and in the phases we use an agile elements especially for user interface design and fit gap analysis in the business processes, to have a better experience also together with the users, better understanding, common understanding. They see what they get. And I think this is way more agile than it used to be in the old years, but it's maybe not comparable with a real Scrum project itself. So.
All right. And I know we still have some time. I do, however, just want to, for those still watching, that we do have the raffle still. So if you would like to get your name in the hat, we'll draw a winner at the end of the presentation, which is in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Great.
Wish you luck in the competition.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't mind. We can do that now if you like. Let me just get everything. So I'm just going to share my screen for a second.
Yep.
All right. And there we go. Oh, endless loop. There you go. All right. So I will just shuffle everybody's names real fast there. And then we will roll the wheel. And the winner is... Oh! Bilo GP. Bilo, are you still with us? You can tag me in the comment section and I'll get everything sorted so you know how to claim your prize.
Congratulations.
All right. Any other questions?
Last questions for now?
Seems everything seems to be wrapped up.
Okay, or already in the next session, which I would understand. There are a lot of very interesting sessions. I'd like to join some of them as well. And it was great having you all together.
Great. All right. So thank you so much, Jörg, for your wonderful presentation. I know everybody has had a wonderful time listening to it. And all right. So I thank you so much, everybody in the audience as well. It's a wonderful way of trying new things out. And it's been a huge success. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining.
Thank you, Pia. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.